Kishy sounds rather attractive sort of word, but isn't at all, because it is an iron foundryman's word for the scum that forms on the top of molten metal. Frank, you'll want to know of what the scum is formed, and I'm here to tell you that it is formed of impure, part carbonized graphite, and it has to be removed with a rake. Frank, you can always learn something every day.
But why don't you look on the sunny side?
Now it is Robert Powell's turn.
Let me take you away from Yorkshire and steel foundries on a little trip to the Caribbean, where around October the 31st, Halloween, you may find that the local greengrocer would have sold out of kishies. His main market being small children, because a kishie is a small pumpkin, or like a pumpkin, it's about the size of a grapefruit. And the inside can be taken out and mashed up and used as a salad. It's a Caribbean pumpkin.
Okay, so it's one of those words that means left-handed. It's the scum on metal, something to do with graphite, Arthur said, and it's a sort of a pumpkin. Gayle, you may choose if you will.
Oh, well, great debates going on with our team. Scum forming on the top of molten metal that has to be scraped away with a rake. It's not very romantic, is it? I'd slightly like to dismiss that because I just don't think it conjures up a very nice image, but never mind.
It's very Arthur, but it's
yes, it's very Arthur. A Caribbean pumpkin on Halloween, size of a grapefruit, for little children. I do quite like that. These tiny little pumpkins with little candles inside, perhaps. But I think our team would like to plump for the left-handed southpaw in Yorkshire from Sheila.
Well, whether the team likes you to plump or not, I certainly do. But I don't care what you plump for, but you've plumped for that. How splendid. That was, Sheila. True or bluff? Nothing. No. Now let us see who gave the true definition of kishy. It was verily. Was, as Frank said, very Arthur. But anyway, just...
I don't care losing that one. Impure scum.
I've rung my little bell, and so we get the next word, samp. And, Gayle, it's your turn.
Well, samp, if I were living in New England, say 200 or 300 years ago, I might have asked, if I had been very depressed, a little bit low, not feeling my best, for a bowl of samp. And when this was brought to me, I would have found myself with a bowl of mashed up corn. Now, I would have asked for this because it perhaps would have reminded me of rather wonderful old Scottish porridge oats. But it would indeed have been mashed corn from a Red Indian recipe, samp.
You weren't doing the New England accent.
No, this was very English. No, sorry.
I see.
Yes.
Splendid. Frank?
This is Frank Muir speaking in his native tongue. This is a deeply boring bluff, so I'll just do it very swiftly and quickly and get it through. It's to do with plumbing. And plumbing in the old days when it was lead pipes and not plastic. Got a lead pipe, got to attach another one. How to do it? Blowpipe, one end of one of them. You tap it on a rod with a little wooden hammer and spread it and make a little wider collar. Then you insert the other tube, which is the same size, bless the union with solder. And what you've got is a samp.
Is that whole thing a scamp? A samp?
Samp, yes, Arthur, samp. It was a scamp who was doing it, but it's samp who's speaking.
It is the name of the joint.
Yes.
The name of the joint.
Yes.
Thank you.
As Arthur so often says, you made it live.
You're more than welcome.
Very good. And now Julian's turn.
On the contrary, a samp is an abbreviation, an 18th century abbreviation for a very useful household item, which was called a Samson box, after its inventor and the man who patented it. Now, it, in fact, was a very simple kind of, and very ingenious kind of mouse-trap, the Samson box, known as a samp. And when the poor wee timorous beastie entered, you see, we can find an excuse for an accent. When he went into the mousetrap, the door dropped by gravity, and it was trapped inside. That was your samp.
It's kind of New England porridge. It's a way of joining the lead pipe, one piece of lead pipe to another, and as Julian said, on the contrary, it's a mousetrap. And so it's Sheila's choice between those three.
Well, now, Frank,
Miss...
deeply boring. It really was very deeply boring. And it sounds much too much like sump. And samp and things. I thought that was a bit sort of... I thought there was a sneaky one there. Julian, a mice trap.
Mice trap.
A mice trap. I don't believe he was a mice trap.
No.
I don't at all. So now, Gayle, I must tell you, I happen to know what this is. And the reason I hope I'm right, and the reason I think I'm right is, first of all, if I'm right, it does make up for having given you bad advice, Arthur.
Oh, my dear, I forgive it freely.
You always do, but wouldn't it be nice to make up for it? And also, because I knew there was going to have, that being a South African had something going for it. They have samp mealies out there, and mealies are corn. And I strongly think, and I'm going to say, that yours is the true one, that samp is actually a corn mash.
Well, you really knew? Or shall we see that you don't really
right.
know?
I'll look for officially.
Let's see now. Gayle, you said it was porridge.
I did. And it is.
Right enough. Right enough. I think it's a bit of a bonus when you happen to know one. Jolly good.
It's
yes.
Extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, I knew Arthur's impure scum, but I couldn't bring myself to say it.
Well, that's only because you were brought up so nicely. So anyway, what's the score now? Let's have a look.
Not good.
4-2.
Not
Well,
good
I
at
don't know.
all.
We go on. And we'll have Gibbong next. Who has a go at that? Yes, it's Arthur.
Well, I don't know that.
Well, now, a gibbong is a large variety of Australian wild plum found in the outback. I'm very astonished. Forgive me. A momentary tickle. I'm very astonished that it never appeared in that poem because it rhymes more or less with billabong and all the rest. Anyhow, the gibbong. But you see this lovely plum hanging there in the outback, famished traveller, and you rush to it and you eat it. And you're absolutely appalled because it tastes of almost nothing and is rather like eating wet Australian wool, of which there is a great deal in Australia. So it's not to be recommended. Pass up the gibbong.
And if you think Arthur was doing an Australian accent there, you are much deceived.
No, but was he attempting it?
Yes, it's a nice question. Let us linger on that. Robert, it is your go.
Most people, if they received a gibbong at the present or came by it any other way, would probably use it to stick pencils in or something like that, because it's a piece of wood, oblong piece of wood, hollow, about the size of a cigar box, and it has holes all the way down the side. Now, I say most people would stick pencils in it. Larry Adler would play it, and he would manage to get some wonderful notes out of it, not unlike perhaps a booming sound of an oboe would emit from a gibbong, and it is from the Caribbean, yet again.
OK, and now Sheila's go. Fairly swiftly, Sheila.
Right, well, I'll be as quick as I can. Once upon a time, there's a French explorer called Lichfield, and he was in the Cameroons in West Africa, looking along a river, and he saw some canoes.
Sounds like a fairly long story, Sheila.
One-man canoes.
You better get to the punchline.
One-man canoes. He thought there were pygmies in. There weren't. They were ordinary natives, but they actually were rowing them kneeling down. They're canoes, one-man canoes, and they're actually rowed, and you have to kneel down to get there.
It's a canoe. It's a wind instrument. It's an Australian plum. Frank.
You can't blow down a block of wood and make it sound like an oboe.
If it has holes in it, I
But that's
think
a
Robert
reed
said it-
instrument. It's a totally different noise.
Now,
the
bully.
Canoe, wild Australian plum, savaging the tree, or canoe. I think it's the plum. I think it's Arthur.
Arthur certainly said it.
Put him out of
True
his
or
misery.
bluff,
He's
Arthur?
won anyway.
It is. A gibbong is really an Australian plum, and that brings us really to the end of our programme. And 4-3, no doubt about it yet again. Arthur's team has won. And I think we better look at the... Yes, they're still the plucky losers. Let's have a look at them. I think you're on a winning streak, Arthur. But there you are. We shall have some more long-lost words from the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Till then, goodbye from Robert Powell, Julian Pettifer, Sheila Steafel, Gayle Hunnicutt, Arthur Marshall, and Frank Muir.
Good night.
Goodbye. Hello. Well, let me welcome you to Call My Bluff. And in the sheepskin noseband, Frank Muir.
Both my guests this week are newspaper columnists, but they also do other things. My first guest has a column once a fortnight in the Times newspaper, but she also does other things, as you'll agree when I say it's Joanna Lumley. My second guest writes a weekly column in the Irish Independent, and the other things he does is write plays. He's a very distinguished, a very funny playwright, Hugh Leonard.
I think after his startling showing over the last couple of weeks, I may safely call him Victor Ludorum, alias Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Very happy to welcome back to the programme that charming actress Patricia Hodge. And very happy to welcome, first time on Call My Bluff, Nick Ross.
Hello. Let's ring the bell. That is the traditional way in which we get a word, good enough word, scrimmy. Frank and his team define scrimmy 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are dud, one's all right, and of course Arthur and his team try and pick that one out. So off you go with scrimmy, Frank.
Well, Robert, scrimmy is a variation, an American variation of brag. Not Melvin Bragg. He's one and only. The card game brag, which is in itself, I believe, a variation of poker. Now, I find cards extremely boring, so I won't go on about them, mainly because I can't win at them. But I don't like cards. I don't know much about this game of scrimmy, except that the pack is reduced to 36 cards. Does that make sense? And apparently it's mainly played by commuters in railway trains.
All right. Now it's Hugh Leonard's go.
Oh, scrimmy. I mean, what else can I say about being here except, oh, scrimmy? Because, you see, in modern times we say, oh, gosh, or be jabers, or Frank Muir, or something like that. But in Victorian times, one had to be very careful of what one said, otherwise one's nanny or one's mother took exception. And so a harmless expletive was required. And so in those days, children were permitted to say, scrimmy.
Right, and now it's Joanna Lumley's go.
Well, scrimmy is a word coined by the film industry. It's the name given to a piece of gauze that you stretch across particularly harsh lights, perhaps like this one, to filter it down and to give a slightly softer light. And in the great golden days of Hollywood, the aging actresses, and sometimes actors, used to be heard calling for a scrimmy, please, possibly a double scrimmy on this one. It's the gauze.
Right enough, they say then. It's that sort of gauze filter, make your face look better. Kind of card game where you only have 36 cards, probably simple sort of game. And a rather polite exclamation, Victorian, of course. Now, Arthur has to make his choice.
We're having a little chin wag. Hold on.
Oh, goody.
Well, there we are. 3 different views. Frank, somehow your brag, your poker, your commuters playing scrimmy, well, of course it could well be. Victorian for gosh, oh my goodness me. Scrimmy, it seems awfully elaborate for that. There's something called scrim, which may have some connection with scrimmy, but I think that's misleading. I think, so idiotic does it seem, it's old Frank's brag.
Oh, you think the simplified game? Well, Frank, own up, old son. True or bluff?
Starters, we mean to go on.
Wow, well, who knows? There it is. He teased. No. That wasn't it. Who gave the true definition of scrimmy? It's there somewhere. There, you see it now. It's the rather euphemistic exclamation for Victorian children. They went in for it was allowed. U certificate, that kind of thing. Parp is the next one. Arthur will tell you about it.
Well, now, Parp is rather delightful. It's a kind of spindly, very delicate wild grass that grows in America south of the Mason-Dixon line. And in the state of Alabama, it is known as panic grass. Why, you ask? The answer is that the slightest breath of wind, it trembles like an aspen.
Oh, aspirin?
Aspen. Oh.
And now, Nick Ross.
PARP is an acronym. It is a word that's used in aviation. It means Precision Approach Radar Procedure. It is a procedure that was developed by British Airways and allows aeroplanes to land in the deepest fog.
Good enough.
On grass.
Patricia Hodge.
Now, we all know and love that important tome, the Big Noddy book. And I'd like to quote from Enid Blyton. Noddy had a good little hooter on his car.
Oh.
When he pressed it, it said pip-pip, and sometimes it said parp-parp. So parp is a noise made by a motor car, like toot or honk.
Well. So, it's the sound that a motor car horn makes. It's an acronym for, well, anyway, what he said. It's an acronym, and it's wild, trembling grass. Frank, your choice?
Noddy's motor car. In the Oxford English Dictionary, noise emitted from same. Wild grass a-tremble is very... I've never heard it called Alabama before. Is it
What
Alabama?
should it be? Alabama.
No,
Being
no,
English, I call it Alabama.
Quite
Yeah,
rightly.
yeah.
Quite
Yeah.
rightly, Uncle Arthur,
Very
quite
well done.
rightly. But it's not that. The precision approach radar principle, whatever it is, surely that must be. Except, no, we think it's Noddy's motor car sound.
That was Patricia who said that. She has to own up now. Was she pulling our legs? True or bluff? She has it there. It's a bullseye. Parp is the noise a motor horn makes, and it's amazing to find it in the OED, but that is where it is, if it is not to be found elsewhere. Punask is the next word. Hugh Leonard's turn.
Well, it doesn't often happen in a West End restaurant. You've got to be a little bit out of London to have something punasked, because it is a verb. In fact, it's preferable to be in the Arctic Circle, in Canada, indeed, because to punask something is a way of cooking a fish, and it's much employed by Canadian trappers. To do it, you get the fish and you slice it down as if it were a kipper, and then you impale it on a long stick, and grill it over an open fire, hope that the polar bears don't smell it, and you've punasked the fish. Punask.
Right enough. Yes. And now it's Joanna's turn.
Punask was an alcoholic drink brewed and drunk by the Baltic peasants, and they made it out of terribly cheap and easy things to find, like swedes and turnips and root vegetables. It was terrifically strong, and a British merchant seaman who drank it once and I think became very, very drunk nicknamed it Popskull.
Well, very, very nicely spoken, merchant seaman. Evidently, Frank, it's your turn now.
Punask is the member of a tribe that lived in southern central Russia. And that's almost all I can tell you about them, except that, A, in 1908, there were approximately 9,000 of them, and also that the Punask chaps tend to have snub noses and receding chins.
What a rigmarole. I never heard anything like it.
Oh, surely. Week by week, Arthur, week by week. It's an alcoholic drink. It's a way of grilling fish, and it's a certain Central Russian tribe, or a member of same. Nick Rossi's choice.
My team have loyally said, OK, Buster, it's up to you. No help whatever. I'm left with the uncomfortable suspicion that two of you are lying. I think that it is unlikely to be a frozen fish heated up in the Arctic, Hugh. I don't know why. Joanna's alcoholic drink, I'm always attracted to alcoholic drink. That's a strong possibility. A merchant seaman's plonk. I like the sound of the merchant seaman's plonk. The member of a tribe that Frank knows nothing about, apart from their numbers specifically, their characteristics specifically, I think is a...
What do you reckon? What do you reckon?
I'm going for the plonk. I think it's Joanna's plonk.
She certainly said it. She said that it was an
We'll be able to
alcoholic.
get up
True
in the
or bluff?
morning.
Here it comes.
Well, this is the answer.
Nothing. Oh dear, who gave the true definition of Punask? You see.
Again.
There you are.
Yes,
Simply a funny way of grilling fish.
Never mind.
Wouldn't you have known? Well, Mucha is the next one, at least that's the way I pronounce it. Nick, it's your turn.
A moocher, sometimes actually pronounced mocha, is a seaweed, a form of seaweed that grows specifically on siliceous rock. It is common in Britain, off the coast of Pembrokeshire. Mocha is also, although it looks like moocher, pronounced mocha, it is also a herbal remedy. It is the seaweed which is boiled in seawater and is then strained, cooled, and you gargle with it, and it's very good, efficacious for curing a sore throat or a cough.
It's not that stuff that has sort of boils on it that you can pop, is it?
It's Mucha coffee. Because
Oh, is it?
Let's see what Patricia says.
A moocher was an embarrassingly short miniskirt worn by Bantu tribesmen in South Africa before the missionaries arrived and put a stop to all that sort of nonsense. It was made out of thin strips of leather or cowhide or sometimes monkey's tails.
OK, now it's Arthur's turn.
Picture, if you will, a pile of pancakes. Because it is Shrove Tuesday in South America amongst certain Catholic tribes, gatherings. And it's a tremendous blowout on Shrove Tuesday, which they call a moocha. It has no religious significance at all. It simply is a tuck-in or blowout before the Lenten fasting.
It is a festival, they say. It is a kind of seaweed you can gargle with, if that's your idea of a good time. And it's a kind of short African skirt that was put a stop to. Hugh, it's your choice.
Where in South Africa, Arthur?
He doesn't have to tell us.
I beg your pardon, South America.
America, I beg your pardon. Where
Did
in
I
South
say
America?
South Africa?
No, I did.
South America.
Yeah.
All over.
All over. Well, it doesn't...
Pronounced, I suppose, mucha.
Moha. Well, it doesn't seem to me like like a South American word, and I think I'm going to discard that. Now, a Bantu miniskirt with a monkey's tails? And it's no wonder that the missionaries stopped it. Seaweed, so kelp me. I think I'm going to go for that.
Resign, sir.
Resign. I'll go for that before I resign, Arthur.
You're choosing the...
I'm choosing the seaweed.
You said the seaweed. It was the pun that put me off. True or bluff? It was Nick Ross.
Oh.
No. Not the seaweed. Who gave the true definition of moocha? Oh, yes, indeed it is. It is the short African skirt that's not seen very much now. Burattine is the next word. Joanna?
The burattine, it's an Italian word, is a sort of resident of the Italian puppet theatre, rather like Signor Pancinello. Burattine is the stupid one, you know, is stupido, brutto. And they say, everybody in the cast, all these sort of little people with sticks and things come and say, "Hey, burattine, hey." Anyway, he's the one they all poke fun at.
My dear, you're acting. It lived.
Well, I don't know that it was nearly as good as your mocha. A very, very un-British pronunciation. Who comes next? I think it's you, isn't it, Frank?
I'll have a go.
Well,
if it'll help you out of your difficulty.
Have a go.
Well, burattine is an American word for a particular shade of brown, which in Britain we probably call donkey brown. If you look in the Sears Roebuck catalogues of the 1900s, you would find garments such as motoring cloaks advertised in navy bottle, also in burattine.
Like what you're wearing now.
Very similar to like what I'm wearing now.
Yeah.
As you say, Nick, I always wear donkey.
Now Hugh has a turn.
Well, nowadays it's pronounced burattine, but in fact it was burattine because it comes from the French. It is the trade. It is or was the trade name of a kind of synthetic butter, which was marketed during the 1870s and was made with churned up animal fat and mixed with skimmed milk. I suppose that somebody at one time came along and said about it, "C'est magnifique, mais ce n'est pas la beurre." However, it was a butter substitute, an early form of margarine.
You know what we're going to do about this man?
You're going to have to look to your laurels, you know, Frank. He's galloping off with them. Anyway, but it's a sort of puppet clown, the silly one. It's mock butter, and it's a shade of brown. And Patricia can make her choice.
Well, yes, we're all totally in agreement. We don't know what it is. One is awfully persuaded by these curious pronunciations. The Italian puppet, that sounds very interesting. The synthetic butter, I think sounds so revolting. I couldn't imagine it ever having caught on. Which it obviously didn't, because then people turned to butter. But the one which I am inclined to believe is the colour of Frank's jacket.
He looked convincing when he said that, did he? Right. True or bluff was it, Frank?
And my
Oh, no.
trousers.
I
Could
can't
you
see-
only see? Oh, this bit. Oh, this is boring.
He positively gloated there. Who gave the true definition of burattine? Yes, it is. It is the silly puppet
we're
in
not
the
doing well.
Italian puppet show. Paracor, I would say. I don't know how it's pronounced, though. Patricia?
Paracor, yes, was a proprietary name for a medicinal ointment that was manufactured around the turn of the century. Now, it was made from a mixture of paraffin wax and antiseptic clay. And it was used, and very successfully, apparently, in the treatment of skin ailments like acne.
OK. Now it's Arthur Marshall's turn.
Paracor was a kind of ecclesiastical scriptwriter in the Greek Orthodox Church. If a bishop felt that the service was getting pretty humdrum and ordinary, don't you know, as many bishops have, he would send for the paracord and order a fine new selection of prayers, litanies, hymns, and so on, which he would parcel out to the less interesting priests to make use of.
What a good idea.
Isn't it?
Now, Nick Ross.
A paracord is a word coined specifically for panellists in Call My Bluff. It has almost no other use whatsoever, except among a very small handful of advanced chemists, for whom a paracord is equal to the molecular weight of a liquid multiplied by the fourth root of its surface tension, divided by the difference between its density and that of its vapour.
By golly, you did that well, lad. What a lesson to us all.
Yes. It's an ointment, they say. It's a chemical unit. And it is a priestly rewrite man, so to speak. Joanna, your choice.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Nick, you know, this is a game, you know? It's not a lesson. We can't wrap our brains around things like this. You know, some of us were advised to give up chemistry when we were 13. Patricia's rather sweet description of how to get rid of acne with this stuff called paracord. Why can't we buy it now? This is what we wanted. Again, when I was 13, paracord would have been top of my shopping list. I love the idea of getting in people to liven up the Greek Orthodox services. I'm not sure that isn't probably... I have a ghastly feeling it's Nick's chemistry formula.
That's the one
it mustn't be.
That's the one you're choosing.
It mustn't be.
Nick said it, true or bluff, he'll have to tell you.
I've said Nick, it isn't.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes. You nearly had to take that back, Frank, but luckily you didn't. It does indeed mean all that he said it meant. If he got it right, I'm sure he did. Sarbat is the next word. Frank.
Sarbat, very pretty Persian rug. Called a sarbat because made at Sarbat on the south coast of the Caspian Sea. Recognised by experts. Arthur, you'd recognise in a flash. Or the other Arthur would, old Negus. Because it's got a border around it of interwoven pears and pomegranates.
And
pears
now...
and pomegranates.
Hugh, Leonard, your go.
Well, if you happen to be in the excellent city of Birmingham and you were short of money and you broke into a house to get some, you should beware definitely of the sarbat, because you see it's a copper's knock, somebody who would grass on you and tell the police. In fact, it has become a verb, so that to sarbat means to tell the police about an imminent break-in or a break-in that has already happened. A grass.
Right. Now, Joanna.
A sarbut is a delicacy, a Bengali extravagance of confectionery. It's handed around at tea parties. It's a ring of sugar, cooked until it's the consistency, yummy, of soft toffee, and then onto that is sprinkled powdered cinnamon and chippy chopped little bits of orange peel. So it's a dear little kind of, thank you, I'll have a sarbut.
Oh, my word, how simply awful.
It's better than some of
It's
better than some of the things I've listened to while sitting here over the years. It's an informer, in Birmingham particularly. A rug, Turkish, I think you said, Frank, and a Bengali sweetmeat. Arthur's choice?
Hang on.
Don't get ratty, Arthur.
Well, now, sarbat. This Birmingham grass. Not my lovely pap or whatever it was.
Whispering grass from
I suppose it could be. Dear, your Bengal delicacy seems simply disgusting, but I dare say it's all right.
Really?
Did you sound
I
jolly?
think it was all right. Toffee with little bits of orange on top. Oh, no, I mustn't interfere.
Yes.
I just thought it sounded all
well
right.
done. Anyway, I don't somehow think Frank's rug with 2 pomegranates round the bottom of it or something sounded so totally dotty that I think I'm going for this dreadful rug.
You choose Frank's definition again, true or bluff. Let's see what he's got to tell you.
He pulls it from under him.
Oh!
No, not that one. Who gave the true definition of sarbot?
Oh, it is.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
That sounded so unreasonable.
Yes, a sarbot is a grass or one who informs on someone else. Now the word now. Goodness me, Arthur, look at the straw. What's that word? Badigeon? Yes, that's the way I'd call it. Arthur, it's your turn.
Well, now, if you're a sculptor and you make a terrible mistake in a sculpture or get a hole in it or something, you reach at once for your badigeon, because it's a sort of mixture, a paste of plaster and grit, which apparently you then pop into the hole in the sculpture or whatever and cover up your mistake. And it's as simply as a Henry Moore standby.
The opposite, actually.
Well, I mean, it's nice to have around if you're sculpting. Woman with child, you know, a woman with no body and a hole in it, or whatever it may be.
You wouldn't want to block it up, would you? It's an accidental one that you.
It's an accidental
one. Yeah.
That's
it.
Very interesting. Next.
Yeah, Nick, I think you come next.
Well, a badigeon is what you need when you do what this team has done tonight, which is die. Badigeon is something which is
loyalty is here.
6-1, I see. A badigeon is a little banner. Well, it can be a big banner, which is borne at the head of the funeral procession of some notable, or should I say ex-notable, a former, a has-been notable, and used to contain the coat of arms. It is very rarely, if ever, now used in Europe, but surprisingly, for something with historic roots, is quite common in North America, where it takes the form of black pennants or streamers from the aerials of cars in a funeral procession.
Right, Patricia.
Badigeon is a rather pedantic word, which, not surprisingly, hasn't been used much since the reign of Henry VII. And it's the collective term for a brood or family of pigeon. Back to the birds, folks. Badigeon.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's all of pigeon. Yeah. Well, it's a lot of pigeon, isn't it?
A lot of pigeons.
A funerary banner
Band of pigeons.
and a sort of cement that sculptors use, Frank. Choice.
Come on.
We might get another one in, who knows?
Another one. Yes, the polyfiller for the filling parrot-shaped holes in statues. Possibly, yes. Oh, whoa. A lot of pigeons. That was done a bit briefly, which indicate it's a 2. Or the other one. I think it's Arthur's rubbish about the cement in the middle of the statue.
Rubbish.
Arthur, you must own up.
Rubbish, may you be forgiven.
Oh, dear. Badigeon, or pronounce it as you will, is what sculptors use to cover up their little mistakes. And our last word is bazan, I would call it. Hugh?
A bazan was an officer in the Turkish army in the time of Kemal Ataturk, and he had a job. His job was simply to look after, feed, care, and maintain for camels.
And now, Joanna.
Bazan is a kind of sheepskin dyed very dark brown by oak trees, and it's used for the binding of rare books.
Frank.
Bazan is a... Golly, what a huge, flat earthenware dish. Supposed to be able to hold a whole tunny fish, but this seems extremely unlikely. Used for banquets in old Persia.
Right. It's something used for rather good bindings of books. Very big dish. And, oh, goody, a Turkish NCO. Isn't that nice? Whose choice? It's Nick Rossi's.
How big was it again, Frank? The dish?
Very big. You've got very
Larger
little
than that
time.
even.
Gosh, we've got very little time. In that case, I won't go for Frank's golly, what a huge earthenware dish, because golly, Frank's had every other one this evening, hasn't he? Officer in the Turkish army named after Kemal Ataturk, and it's something to do with a camel. Too many camels in that for my liking, so I'm going to go for Joanna's sheepskin used for binding rare books.
Joanna, was it true? Was it a bluff?
It is true, sir.
Well. redeemed on the post. I mean, not exactly Victor Ludorum anymore, but there you are. 2-7 or 7-2. Frank Muir's team has won. And spare a glance at the others, will you? There they are. They did their best. We'll be back next time with more pre-electrics from the Oxford English Dictionary. Until then, goodbye from Hugh Leonard, Nick Ross,
Goodbye.
Joanna Lumley,
Goodbye.
Patricia Hodge, Frank Muir, and Arthur Marshall. Goodbye. This is Call My Bluff, and romping onto Big Side, we have Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Delighted to be here again with, on my left, Patricia Hodge. And on my right, Nick Ross.
Hello.
And we are not without the sage of Egham, Frank Muir.
Good evening. Once again, for the second week, I have on my right Joanna Lumley. And on my left hand, Hugh Leonard.
Let us see whether the words still lurk where they have ever lurked. Yes, Peeny Wally is the first word. Now, Arthur and his team will define Peeny Wally 3 different ways, at least, and 2 of them are dud. One's okay. That's the one that Frank and Co. tried to pick. Arthur, what of Peeny Wally?
Well, now, Frank and friends, I don't know how recently you've been wandering in the Australian outback.
Fairly recently.
Oh, good. Because in that case you will be certain to have heard a sort of beautiful, fluting, lovely musical sound. And it is a Peeny Wally.
Not Rolf Harris.
Shut up. And a Peeny Wally is a whistle used by Australian Aborigines. It's made in the sort of ordinary way of a whistle, a long tube of wood cut out with holes in it. And they play this in order to attract deities, to bring them nice things.
Deities?
Deities, gods. Oh, how slow some people are.
Now, let us find out what Nick Ross says.
Well now, Frank and friends, I don't know how long it is since you've been wandering in the Jamaican outback, but had you done so, you would have found. You would have seen
Nick.
Peeny Wallies. Peeny Wallies, otherwise known as Parophorus atajo, or potato, or potato, thalamus, is a firefly which dances around the outback of Jamaica and is known colloquially as it lights up the outback as Peeny Wally.
It must be Patricia's turn.
Peeny Wally, or Peeny Wally, as you've guessed by my Irish accent, it's a Scots word. Rather contemptuous word. When one is referring to an animal or person who is meagre or feeble or a bit sickly, they're called Peeny Wally. They do say, you know, that Flora MacDonald's father, on first seeing her as a newborn baby, not only called her Peeny Wally, but also Scrimpet.
Well, yeah.
I think you get 100 marks for not doing the accent, Patricia. Very good.
I wouldn't dare.
It's a whistle, then. It's a firefly, and it's, as it were, to be feeble. Frank has his choice here.
Come on.
Oh, yes, no, it's also fascinating. I had to recover from your performance, Arthur. Blowing a whistle to summon deities. What a fascinating thought. But whistles are normally used for driving away deities, aren't they?
Not these.
backing out of the outback.
The Australians always do everything upside down.
Yep, fireflies lighting up in the non-existent outback of Jamaica is another choice, or it is Peeny Wally in Scotland. The accent was approximate. We think it is the Scottish definition.
You do. It was Patricia who refused to do the accent. God bless her. True or bluff?
Not a lot of confidence.
I'm deeply sorry about this.
Nothing. No, nothing to do with Scotland, it seems. Who gave the true definition? Here it comes. Have to know it. Got it there somewhere? Oh, yes, indeed. It's a firefly, and apparently in the Jamaican outback. Now we'll have another word. Boombass is the next word. Frank, what of this?
Boombass, I'll tell you what it is, Robin. A boombass is a verb. And it's I boombass, you boombass, he or she boombass. And it really means, quite simply and unequivocally, we won't take no argument about this, we'll book none, it means to stuff with cotton wool. For instance, if you have an earache, perish forbid, or if you had the dressing room next to the central heating pump, you know, you might boombass your ear. Or it has been known, Arthur, for ladies to boombass their bodies.
Their bodies?
Their bodies.
Oh, body.
Same thing, roughly.
Yes. Now it's...
Oh, I see.
Hugh Leonard's go.
Well, a boombass is actually a wind, a big wind. In America, they have a cyclone. In the Pacific, they have a typhoon. In the Atlantic, they have a hurricane. And in Ireland, we have what we call a hockey. Now, however, this boombass, the BBC pronounce it hockey, but this particular boombass is in Africa. It is a whirlwind. The Ashanti tribes regard it with great superstition, and they believe that it is the personification of God. It happens rather rarely, and perhaps that's for the best, but it is a whirlwind in Africa.
Okay, Joanna.
The boombass is a shade-giving tree native to the Antipodes.
Oh, she's doing it. She's doing it.
In the autumn, the leaves of the boombass turn a livid purple. And it's not widely known that Matthew Flinders, who was an explorer in the 18th century, who discovered very, very large areas of Australia, which heaven knows is a large enough place, is buried beside a boombass tree just outside Melbourne.
Very appropriate.
It's a tree, Australian Antipodean. It's a whirlwind, and it is to wad with cotton wool. Arthur, to choose.
Oh, Lord, they're all simply dreadful.
The tree sounds far too plausible to be true.
Well, keep your thoughts to yourself, dear man.
No, don't, but keep
They
your
may be listening. I can't think. We've had lots of wind on this programme in every sense. And I can't think it's this African whirlwind summoned by God or whatever. No, I can't think it's that. Your Australian tree was beautifully done. Your RAD accent, dear, was simply lovely. But I don't think it's that. I think it's old Frank's stuffing bodices with cotton wool.
Yes, he did say so. He certainly did get very near to saying something like that. Now, who... Yes. Come on, Frank, you've got to... It's there. True or bluff?
I am proud to say
well done, indeed. It is to wad whatever you please with cotton wool. And the next word is kufa, is the way I pronounce it. Nick Rossi's turn.
A kufa is a girdle. A kufa is of religious significance to Zen Buddhists. It is made up of 72 threads or strands which are interwoven. Each thread or strand represents one chapter from the great book of Zen Buddhism, which I have to look down at my notes to find, is called the Kung Yasna. And it is worn around the waist, not the Kung Yasna, but the kufa.
Yes, indeed. Right now, Patricia's turn.
Those of you familiar as I'm sure you are, with Phoenician pottery of the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, will have witnessed a representation of a kufa. It's quite literally a fabulous animal which has the body of a deer, the tail of an ox, and a single upward curving horn.
A bit like Frank Muir, really.
I wasn't going to say that. Kufa.
Let us now apply to Arthur.
Well, now, the Welsh are very clever people, and they travel about sometimes in a coracle, you know, a wicker frame covered with skins, which floats, and they float about on the rivers. And you may think that the Welsh discovered this. Not at all. They were discovered by the Persians, who...
I'm so sorry.
Who used to wobble about on the Euphrates, and their coracles were called kufas, and they appear in a poem by Tennyson, if I may quote. Where down Euphrates...
Start again, Arthur.
Where down Euphrates, swift and strong, the shield like kufas bound along.
Oh, wonderful.
Not at all.
We'll call you.
Let me tell you, let me remind you what it is, or they allege it is. It's a girdle of a religious significance, fabulous beast, and this Persian coracle.
I think.
Hugh's turn.
Yeah, well, I don't know much about Zen Buddhism, but I really don't think it's a girdle, Nick, really. I don't even think they had girdles in the times you were thinking of. And as for the animal, with the body of a deer and the tail of an ox and one horn, and no doubt a lot of bull besides, no, I don't think so.
Oh.
I think I must go... Yes, I must go for the coracle, despite your sigh of despair.
You're plumping for the Persian coracle.
I did that Tennyson so beautifully.
Arthur,
you did.
True or bluff? And that's what it is, a Persian coracle, though. If that's Tennyson, I'm a Dutchman, but I don't know about that. It probably has to be true. Cassie is the next one. Hugh Leonard's turn.
Well, in the 1920s, before Valentino came along in America and introduced the word chic, meaning a very handsome boyfriend, there was the word Cassie, which meant if you had a Cassie, he was a pretty attentive fella, and he took you out and he wore a raccoon skin coat and he took you to dances and things like that. So the word is probably a definition. The OED doesn't exactly say that, but the word is probably a condensation or compression of Casanova. But a boyfriend, very attentive, very loving, was known as a Cassie in the 1920s in America.
Right, Joanna.
A Cassie is a very unusual kind of baskety thing which the Orkney Islanders carry about on their backs. Why it's unusual is that it's suspended. It's made of straw, rather carefully kind of plaited straw, but the straps are made of leather. And it's got two straps, and they can put the sort of strappy bits over their shoulders, leaving their hands free to cling unto the tam o' shanters in the high wind.
Another accent. Very good, very good. Frank, it's your turn now.
Cassie is thieves' cant, and Cassie means piece of cheese, and to the expression "trim the Cassie," which they used to use, it seemingly meant, well, literally to cheese pair, but it meant you've got to be very careful with the money because it's awfully short, and if you're going to expect luxuries like food, then we've got to save, you know. Cassie, lump of cheese.
It suddenly went Australian at the end. Just a touch. It's a basket. It's a basket.
It got transported and then came back.
It did. It's a basket. Scottish, I think. A piece of cheese and a pushful boyfriend. Nick Ross has to choose between those.
So it's a snazzy fellow, like Hugh Leonard. It's a straw basket with leather straps that leaves the hands free to utter in an Orkney or Shetland accent. I don't go for that somehow. I don't know why. It sounds far too plausible for me, and I know him call my bluff. Anything that sounds reasonable is not so. Frank's sounds by far the most ludicrous. To cheese pear, apart from which I know that Frank is an honourable gentleman who would never allow an untruth to pass his lips. It is to cheese pear.
What, you don't want to discuss the third one? I mean, the pushful
The third
boyfriend.
one?
You entirely discard that.
The snazzy fellow.
Oh, you already said that, didn't you? You did, I see. I thought you were gonna-
He's too snazzy for it to be.
I see what you mean. So you're picking what Frank said. Well, true or bluff, Frank?
Is it action? Action. Have to get up early in the morning to fool on.
Nay, nay. Who gave the true definition of Kazi?
Actually, with both hands free to grasp.
In spite of the accent, it was perfectly true. It was a Scotch basket or thereabouts. 2-all, interesting juncture. Mugan is the word, and Patricia defines it.
Mugan is something which Manx fishermen sit at home and make. It's a watertight apparatus made out of animal skins filled with straw. And they use them as a sort of buoy to mark their lobster pots. It facilitates recovery of a lobster pot. A Manx term.
OK.
They've got no legs.
What about Arthur now? He's
A
going.
moogan is a tube of knitted wool, frank, about 15 inches long and about 3 inches wide, that is extremely useful in cold weather in Scotland. And when the icy winds are blowing, they get out their moogans, and the gentlemen pull them up their legs under their kilts to keep their leggies warm. And the ladies pull them up their arms over their elbows to make sort of elongated mittens to keep their arms warm. A sort of Scottish woolen contrivance to keep warm.
Warm neath the kilt.
Yes.
Get away.
Now let's try Nick Ross. What does he say?
A moogan is the antithesis of a jimp. A jimp, as of course you're well aware, being a copper nail or pin with a round head which is used in shipbuilding, and the nail head stands proud of the timber when it is struck home. But a moogan has a square head which is tapered, so that when it is struck home into the ship's timbers, it will not stand proud, but will be flush with the surround.
What a wonderful step forward in shipbuilding that discovery was.
Yes. Yeah, they never sank after that. Scotch leg warmers, I think you were getting at, Arthur. A mooring device, a floating device to keep the lobster pots where they are, or to show you where they are, and it's a square-topped copper nail used in shipwrights work. Joanna's choice.
Well, honestly, I mean, I did know what a jimp was, and I've never heard of a moogan. It's, it's pretty silly. You don't have to have a wedge-shaped nail to beat it in. You just have a flat nail. Manx fishermen's skins with straw. It's such an elaborate thing, darling. I think you could have blown air into it. You wouldn't have to put straw into it. I'd discard entirely your markers. Discard them.
Go soggy.
But the air might escape and the straw wouldn't, you see.
The straw would get soggy and drag them straight down.
Soggy.
As for Arthur's, 15 inches by 3 inches across, a Scotsman dragging his wee leggy into a 3-inch aperture up his thighs. I've never heard of such a thing. I tell you whose it is. It's Nick's wedge-shaped nail.
The wedge-shaped nail that you sneered at earlier, but you were just putting him off the scent. True or bluff, Nick Ross? No. No. Who gave the true definition of moogan?
How can you sneer at my moogan?
Yeah, 3 inches across. The Scots are supposed to be mean. They'd have little, tiny leg warmers. 3-2. I mean, if any are listening, I was only kidding there. Sandpot is the next word. Joanna, off you go.
A sandpot is a unisex garment. It's a sort of sarong worn in Cambodia by men and women, obviously unisex, same sex. Long stretch of cloth, and they wind it round and sort of round and round in the bits that you can't see under these desks, the sort of lower bits.
Yes, yeah, we understand.
I'm not quite getting it, dear.
It's a sort of cloth. It's like a huge clothy knicker, actually, honestly, Arthur, if you must know. It's a big kind of cloth knicker.
Well, there we are.
Knicker.
Where is it worn?
Around
in Cambodia.
In Cambodia.
Yeah.
This is important.
Well, it's now it's Frank's turn.
For the doty-minded. It's Sampot, yes. Eskimos. Picture an Eskimo finding his way home through the blizzard. Snow descending.
I thought it was the Eskimo.
You can't see the road. I mean, you can't see the path through the tundra, whatever they have in Finland or wherever they are. But you can see a sampot. Aha. Because it's a cairn of ice or whatever, which rises up and marks the route. And sometimes they have a pole in them, and if they haven't got any poles around that particular bit of Eskimo land, then they stain it red with any blood they've got available.
Yeah, right. Well, now it's Hugh's turn.
Well, the first mention of Sampot comes into the 4th chapter of the book of Micah in the Old Testament. And the Sampot was first awarded for Micah. However, today it is a scroll. Today, however, no, that is untrue. Today it is a scroll which is presented to a successful student of Jewish law. And there is an enormous ceremonial about this, and the Sampot is both the scroll and the ceremonial.
Yes, well, it's an Eskimo's landmark. It is a type of sarong or knicker, body stocking or the like, and it's a scroll. Patricia, your choice.
Oh, to be inspired. An Old Testament scroll. The Eskimos come into this an awful lot, don't they? I suppose it's a good blanket cover for anything. And unisex, I've heard about these unisex garments, let me tell you. I've never heard of them called sampots, but that doesn't mean anything. I would like for 1 minute, as I grab at this, to believe that it's an Old Testament scroll.
That's the one you choose.
That's the one
Patricia.
I choose.
Right.
The ceremonial or the scroll.
Well, it was
or
certainly
both,
Hugh Leonard who said that. He has to own up that. True or bluff?
I can't win this one either.
There. Oh, yes. It isn't an Old Testament scroll or the like. What is it? Who gave the true definition of sampot?
I did.
There you have it. It is indeed a sarong or whatever of the sort. Oh, 3 all, nip and tuck. Creaker, or creaker, I think. Arthur's turn.
Creaker. Back in the 18th century, if you were a London shipowner and you wanted a load unloaded or loaded in the Pool of London, and there were no English people about, you sent for a team of creakers because they were Dutch stevedores, renowned for the hard work they put in and the cheapness of their labour. So it's a team of Dutch stevedores.
Working in London docks?
Working in London docks, as many foreigners used to come here to work.
They wouldn't have liked that.
Nothing odd in that. Hence Cockney slang, to stop them understanding what people were talking about.
This is developing into a 3-volume novel.
I thought everybody knew that.
Let's ask Nick Ross to take up the thread.
When was this?
The 18th century.
Oh, I missed that bit.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
I was chatting to my friend.
Throw another log on the fire. Nick Ross's turn.
Criker or criker is a sartorial fur. Now, criker is the proper name of the fur. Creaker is what it became called when it was put on the collars. It was a form of collar that was put on gentlemen's top coats for quite a period, from about the 1860s to the 1920s. And although it's called a fur, criker is actually a manufactured product. It's made from wool. It was highly valued and is actually more valuable now than it was at the time. It is grey, it has some white bits in it, and is the next best thing to Astrakhan.
Right. Patricia Hodge, her turn.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's a bird. It's anywhere else in the world, it would be called a pectoral sandpiper. But to the inhabitants of Rhode Island in the States, it's a creeker. And they watch this rather beautiful thing wade in and out of the Atlantic Ocean. It has very long legs and magnificent breast plumage.
Splendid. It is a Dutch stevedore, 18th century. It is a kind of fur, second only to astrakhan, and a species of sandpiper. Frank makes his choice.
Yes. No, there's no problem here. I mean, the neon sign on the forehead say Bluff, Bluff. It's, we don't think it's the double Dutch speaking to confuse the dockers. Nor do we believe that gesture is going to fool us into believing that it's actually true. Nor that the fur colour, interesting, come back to that, or this, we think, such as I, think that it's the onomatopoeic noise made by this wretched seabird of America.
But let us see then. Patricia, you own up now. True or bluff?
No.
Yes, indeed. Creaker is that sandpiper. Did you say because you really have heard one, or you?
No, I think it's an onomatopoeia.
Joanna knew?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Lots of birds have their names after the noise they make. He probably goes, eeka, eeka, eeka.
I led with my chin there, didn't I? I'll not ask questions again. Let's have another word. Well, I'd say cannakin, but I don't know, cannakin or something like that. Frank?
I would tend to say cannakin, but because in Scotland, in the last century, when they started having baths, not very frequently, but they did have them, when my lord wanted a bath, and you know Scottish castles, they're about 8 stories up, presumably the servants began, the gillies and everything, by carrying the water up in an egg cup, because it's easier to carry. And they realised they had to go up and down about 140,000 times, and they realised, one of them, with officer material, realised that the bigger amount they took up at one time, the better. So in Scotland, they had this very large can with 2 handles. It was a 2-man job in which they carried water up for servicing the ewers and the baths and things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe that, it's Scotch. Oh, I could add, of course, there's a lot of French in Scotland because of Edinburgh. Just to make it more plausible.
Let us find out what Hugh Leonard says now.
Look up. Is it a man? Is it a bird? It is neither. It is a duck. And if you've ever had any pâté, chances are you may have had some of this particular duck, the cannakin. It is a French breed of duck. It's rather like an Aylesbury duck. It has a small head, a neck rather long like an umbrella handle, and it is bred mainly around Limousin, and it is used for duck pâté when it is taken into captivity and reared for that purpose.
Right. Now, Joanna.
Cannakin is cloth, cotton cloth, extraordinarily white, of a whiteness desirable in cricket shirts and in nuns' wimples. In the last century, it was imported to this country by the ton, by the mile, from Java and Sumatra. Miles of it.
Oh,
I just left you there.
You stopped on a precipice.
A reverie.
There. Yes, delicious. A pewter jug, 2 handles, I think he said, cotton cloth, very white, and a kind of a duck, which supplies pâté and other things, I've no doubt. Arthur?
A thing of pewter is a
2-1 over here. I somehow don't think it's this reams after ream, bolt after bolt of cotton cloth.
I'll have to hurry you a little.
Oh dear,
Arthur.
oh dear. And I'm not at all sure about the duck. I think it's... I know it's a very close friend of Cannakin, but I think it's Frank's bucket.
Then let him show up. True or bluff, here it is. No. No. We've got to know the true definition before we draw stumps. Who had it?
Oh, it's that cloth.
Yes. That nice white cloth is what cannakin, as Joanna pronounced it, is. So there we have 3-5, or I should say 5-3. Frank Muir's team have won. And Arthur's team tried awfully hard. Give them a chance. We shall be wheeling out the velocipedes from the Oxford English Dictionary again next week, I make no doubt. Till then, goodbye from Nick Ross.
Goodbye.
Hugh Leonard. Goodbye. Patricia Hodge. Joanna Lumley. Arthur Marshall. And Frank Muir. And goodbye. Hello, here we are. Call my bluff with the old fifth ace, Frank Muir.
Thank you. My first guest is a lady of many parts. She's been a dancer and she's sailed the Atlantic single-handed, and she's now a novelist. And all the parts fit together very neatly to form Clare Francis. My next guest, we're always happy to have back on the programme on this side of the table because he's so good at making snap decisions. That was a little joke. Because he's photographer Lord Lichfield.
And in the blue corner, Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. I'm very happy to welcome, for her first appearance on Call My Bluff, the delightful writer and singer, Lynsey de Paul. And very happy to welcome back, and to my side on this occasion, the distinguished actor Robin Bailey.
We simply ring the bell. That usually produces the first word. There it comes, yes. Oh, bossum, I suppose, something like that. Anyway, Frank and his team will define oh, bossum 3 different ways. 2 of them are no good. One's the correct definition. That's the one that Arthur and co try and pick. So I don't know how you pronounce it, Frank. Oh, bosom or...
No, son. No, not in this programme.
Yes.
Obosom. Obosom is a junior or fairly sort of second grade, second 11 god in the pagan theology of the Ashanti tribe in Africa. Unlike the principal god, Oniyami, who's very remote, Obosom is quite a sort of friendly, although junior, deity, and you can consult him on domestic matters. You can say, OK to put the maize in on Thursday, you know, or my mother-in-law's coming on Sunday, could you whip up a hurricane? He's a nice, friendly Ashanti junior deity.
Right, now it's Patrick Lichfield's turn.
Well, if you happen to be in Japan and want to get plastered, which is actually not very difficult, as I recall, but plastered in mud, you go to an obosum. And an obosum is actually a sort of health spa where bubbling waters and steam come up through mud in which they cake you and bake you. And it's a sort of, well, you know, it's sort of very good for you, apparently, and brings out the bad bits in you and restores you and so on. So it's a kind of bubbly hot water spring.
Right, I see.
Yes, you do. I'm so glad.
Clare, it's your turn.
Well, it's obosum. And it's probably better known to the likes of David Bellamy as the Sudanese paddle plant. And it's a kind of rush, very wide-leaved rush, which grows beside the White Nile and its tributaries. And if it's spread out and dried in the sun, it can actually be used as a paddle for a canoe.
Useful.
Very well, yeah.
It's a rush. It's that rather useful rush. It's a Japanese health resort or hot spring where it does you good, and it's a rather second-grade god. Arthur, it's your choice.
Now, this Japanese health spa really does seem awfully peculiar.
He's worried.
Obo
Got him
Sum.
worried. Got him
It
worried.
could well be. And this Sudanese rush that can be used as a paddle. Why don't they just use a paddle rather than drying Sudanese rushes? And old Frank's ghastly sounding god, your pagan god. I can't think it's the health spa, and I can't think it's the rush. Frank, I'm going for your pagan god.
Ah, he said it was junior sort of god, true or bluff, Frank?
He is displeased.
Ah, yes. Well done. Very good. Off to a flying start. Yes, it is a god, a deity in Africa. Ricky is the next word. Arthur will tell you about it.
Well, now, a ricky is an agricultural implement that I don't doubt has long since been superseded by mechanical means. But it's what peasants used to use. It's a sort of glorified hoe with a very, very sharp cutting edge. And they use it for garnering crops of cabbage or cauliflower or broccoli, because it cuts very, very sharply at earth level into the stem and saves them having to bend down a lot. Glorified hoe.
Rubbish.
Right, you never know. You never know. Wait and see. Robin Bailey's turn.
I think the only silent film star I ever brushed shoulders with was Tom Mix, and he came into the bar under the stage of the Theatre Royal in Nottingham with a 10-gallon hat, bristling with guns, and he hustled his way to the front of the queue and said, rather disappointingly, "Give me a grapefruit." Well, in the 1870s in Washington, they had a taste for the rather harder stuff, and there was a Colonel Joseph Rickey who used to go into Shoemaker's Bar in Washington, and he would order bourbon whiskey with a little lime juice and a little soda water. And this drink caught on, and his cronies began to order it too, and, well, it was rather a mouthful to ask for all that, and so they just said, "You give me a Rickey." You can still get a Rickey in almost any bar in America today. Have a nice day.
Now, Lynsey Paul.
Well, a Rickey is a word that is no longer used in the English language, but it's a Victorian word, and it means weak or feeble, or a little bit trembly, a little bit fidgety, a little Rickey on your feet. In fact, Robert Louis Stevenson one time was so ill that he was quoted as saying, "I am so weak, like a newborn kitten, that my hands are too ricky to lift glass or put pen to paper." Ricky, weak, feeble.
What do you think?
Sort of a drink, a tool for cropping without bending down too much, and a state of being rather feeble, rather weak. Frank, you have to choose.
Well, I wonder whether there's a toy with them. I just sort of dived. What it ain't is the glorified hoe, because you don't garner vegetables by hoeing them and cutting them off with a hoe at ground level. In my book,
It saves you bending down, old bean.
You don't hoe beans. So that's out of the way. So whether it's the drink or the... we're trying to... Ricky is halfway between Dicky and Rickety, isn't it? And I think that's a bit worrying. We think it's Ricky the American drink.
Do you?
You do.
But if it's not that, we could have a second choice.
You're playing a different game if that's the case. You're choosing the drink?
Sort of, yes.
Robin Bailey said it was that, true or bluff?
Oh, dear.
Ah, yes. Yep, yet again, one of the few words I've ever known on this programme. Yes,
We are
Ricky's
educated,
drink.
Robert.
Not really. I've been here too long for that to happen. Booge is the next word. Patrick, your go.
If you happen to be travelling by horse-drawn transport when it existed, and a shower of rain came upon you, you would obviously need an umbrella. Now, to have that in your horse-drawn vehicle would probably encumber other passengers and so on. Equally, if some highwayman sprang on you, you would need a sword, and you would need to have somewhere to put it. Now, where you would have put it was in a booge, and a booge was a bulge which actually stuck out at the back of the horse-drawn transport, and was just a receptacle, really, for those sort of helpful items that might repel either the weather or the footpad. Not the footpath, the footpad.
Well done.
Letters apply to Clare Francis.
Well, booge, it's a verb, to booge. I booge, you booge, everyone booges. And it means to mark an item as belonging to you. It's a mark of ownership. And it's very popular.
A dog does that.
No, Frank. No, Frank. Hold on.
Introduced a note we don't want. Press on, Clare, dear.
Thank you very much. Well, in the sheep-owning areas of Yorkshire, they mark the newborn lambs by, well, they booge them, in fact, which is the verb they use, by painting them on the bottom. Is this another tone we don't want to use? Sorry.
Who goes next? Frank.
Booge. It's a bit dull, really. It's a vaguely brownish, coarse, very cheap silk. It's an Anglo-Indian word. Booge, booge, booge. It sounds, doesn't it? It sounds like booge. And this, in the days of the Raj, British Raj, it was the sort of stuff which was tacked round a bamboo frame, suspended from the ceiling. A string was attached from it to a punkah waller's big toe as he lay on the ground, and he bent his knee once every 4 minutes, and that was the punkah which shifted the air. Booge.
Right. They say then that it's the process of identifying something. It might be a sheep, it might be a Turkish customs official, for all I know. It's a receptacle on a horse-drawn vehicle for sticks and brollies and swords and that kind of thing, and rather cheap brown silk. Robin Bailey to choose.
Well, I wouldn't have trusted my sword, let alone my umbrella, let alone my sword in a booge. I'd have wanted a sword holder. What's wrong with that? A double-barreled word. Or an umbrella holder. I don't think they booge little lambs. I think what they might do is use it in the punkah. Kind of cheap silk.
You think so? Frank said that, didn't he? True or bluff now? He has to own up. Well, he looks rather well pleased. Look at the acting.
They might, but they don't.
No, it wasn't that. It has to be one of the other two. Who gave the true definition of booge? Yeah. It's a boot, really, but shaped particularly for sticks and brollies and swords. Pamaquin is the way I pronounce it. Robin, your turn.
Pamaquin's a drug. It's a drug that was used like quinine, atobrin, mepacrin. There's a long string of them which were used as a preventive against malaria. And Pamaquin was issued to the 14th Army in Burma during the last war, and it did prevent malaria. Unfortunately, it gave them anemia, and so it was withdrawn.
Right, Lynsey, your go.
Probably it.
Pamaquin is an Irish word, so it's pamaquin. And pamaquin was a stone carving or a wooden carving that the ancient Irish used to put on the outsides of their primitive dwellings. And it was sort of humanoid, and sometimes it looked like a child and had a huge pot belly, like nobody here at all, and a big gouging eye, and it was meant to ward off evil spirits.
Well, it would ward me off, wouldn't it?
Now it's Arthur's go.
The correct pronunciation is pamaquin, because it's French. And it was one of the many delightful things introduced into America by the French in the 18th century. And it's a delicacy, a tea-time delicacy. It's a very thin, wafer-like tea cake, which was made of the usual things, plus a little white wine to give it that little added flavour. And one doesn't doubt that the Americans then proceeded, that ghastly procedure, to dunk it in their lemon tea, to the horror of the French, I don't doubt.
In the 18th century?
Little French tea cake. Yes, or their coffee. What's wrong?
Ah, I do.
Well, they say that it's that kind of tea cake. It's an effigy in Ireland, or it was, and it's a pill, a specific against malaria, warded off. Patrick Lichfield to choose.
Well, none of us, I mean, I've been told that this is a joint effort, and none of us believe Arthur for a minute, with the greatest respect. I just think that there's some confusion about the other two, though, because Lynsey's, I'm very tempted by Lynsey's. But no, because there's a little bit of force going on in my life. I thought that Robin's thing about the drug for malaria actually was called Paludrin, but my memory doesn't go back quite as far as the last war. But since I've got a lot of muscle on my right.
No, take no notice of
No,
that. Please.
just if you want to come back on the programme.
I would have gone for Lynsey, but we are going collectively for Robin.
You coward, you. Oh, weak knee. However, has he done well? Has he not done well? Yes, it was Robin who said that. Was it the pill? Oh, yes, it was! Did you know it, Frank? I mean,
No, I
go
didn't
back
know
a
it.
bit yourself.
Sounded right.
I do now.
Yeah, I see. Just inspiration, I suppose. Another little word. Tringle. Quite a little word. Clare.
A tringle was a word commonly used in the 17th century, and it means a long and slender rod of wood or metal, and it might be square or round in section. And its most common use, perhaps, that we'd know of, it was in a domestic setting, in fact, the four-poster bed. And you know those curtains they always used to hang around the four-poster bed? Well, they were held up by tringles.
Mm-hmm. What does Frank say?
It's quite difficult to explain. It's a thing to do with accessories of clothes, which are not right. Now, the three buttons there are pointless, aren't they? Because they don't button anything up and they don't
Is this
unbutton.
to be a lecture, I wonder?
Yes, but
Bear with you, I know.
well, what you want to know is whether you may take notes.
Yes.
Yes, you may. These are otios, in the sense that they are no longer of any use at all. But there's another kind of decoration, which is a tringle, which was rather sort of vulgar, not quite right. It's a very sort of subtle thing, and it's late Victorian, and the sort of things they'd say, commenting on a lady's dress, would say her tea gown had so many tringles that she looked like a pearly queen.
Yeah.
What are you laughing at?
Oh, you. He's just thinking he needn't have taken the notes after all, I suppose. Patrick, you'll go.
Now, if you happen to be an undergraduate at Cambridge University in the 1880s, you might well have attended a tringle, because that was the word that was given by the students to an open-air tutorial that took place either at a picnic or in a punt or anywhere outside, that was given by a certain Don who was at Jesus College, whose name was T.R. Ingle. You may laugh.
Surprise.
Not T.B., just T.R. Ingle.
How fortunate.
For him. So it was an outside sort of tutorial.
Ah, right. It's this open-air tutorial that Mr. Tringle used to give. Mr. Ingle used to give. It's a slender wooden rod, quite useful, and it's a species of unnecessary, rather mystifying adornment, according to Frank. Lynsey, you have a choice there.
Yes, we have unanimously decided on who we think it is. But let me just first say, Frank, it was wonderful, vulgar decoration, and who better to tell? No, it was really. I don't feel it's vulgar decoration belonging to the Victorians. And although it was marvellous T.R. Ingle and open-air tutorials, I can't see it. I mean, why wasn't it just an Ingle? I don't think it's
a nicer word.
Tringle. Yeah. I feel it's a post, those long rods that hold up four-poster beds, as Clare said.
That's what you're going to choose, then,
That's what we're going to choose.
Have you done well, I ask myself,
I say
Clare,
we because
true
I'm
or
not
bluff?
They've done terribly well.
Yes, bullseye.
They're otios now.
Yes, a tringle. I think it was the stuff that you... it
Yes,
was
you hung
at the
the
top,
curtains
that's
from,
right. Not that we need to go into it any further. Scroddy is the next one. Lynsey de Paul tells you about it.
Scroddy. Scroddy is a word reputedly invented by D.H. Lawrence. Now, before you go rushing away to read Lady Chatterley again, it isn't in that book. But scroddy means sort of a bit tatty, not very well dressed. In fact, he would refer to somebody as a rather scroddy fellow, and sort of a cross between shoddy and scruffy. So somebody would be called scroddy.
Yes. Arthur's go.
Come with me to the earlier days of do-it-yourself in cottages. And cottagers used to make a sort of sticky paste of gelatin and whitewash, or gelatin and lime, and spread it on the walls of their cottage, because it was a splendid preventive of damp, and also was a sort of heater. It kept the warmth in.
Right. Robin Bailey has a turn now.
Well, I don't know whether you've ever accepted an invitation to tea in Australia. It's a dangerous invitation because you may go expecting a couple of biscuits on a tray, and what you get is a bowl of soup, roast beef, and Yorkshire pudding, 4 vegetables, treacle pudding, followed by coffee, and then you go to the theatre and try to give a performance. However, there's no ambiguity at all about scroddy, because that is a bite of food taken out of the tucker bag by a sheep farmer during a day in the outback. He would take a bite of scroddy and a swig of that well-known lager. That's what scroddy is.
So, according to what they say, D.H. Lawrence coined it, or used it, perhaps not coined it, meaning tatty. It's a food to an Australian, a snack, a bite, and it's rather a primitive way of stopping the damp coming into through the cottage wall. So, Clare.
Well, we don't go for D.H. Lawrence inventing this scroddy. I mean, either it was around, or it didn't exist in D.H. Lawrence's...
Or reputedly.
Well, no scroddies there, I don't think. Now, we're sort of undecided between the other two, I have to be honest. We can't make up our minds, at least they're for the Australian snack. And I don't know... Yeah, no, I think the gelatin and whitewash, it sounds too likely. So you're out. Sorry, Arthur.
It was...
Sorry.
Arthur.
So I think... No. Sorry, Arthur.
Oh, all right.
No, sorry.
You're keeping me on the edge of my seat. Splendid.
It's only because I'm undecided. The Australian snack.
You are having that.
Yes,
well,
I
that's
think
what
so.
Robin Bailey said. True or bluff? He has to own up to it now.
We're wrong.
Nothing. No. Who gave the true definition of scroddy? Oh, no, it wasn't. It was Lynsey. Yes. Good old D.H. Lawrence. Sometimes, it's really true. And so scroddy does mean rather tatty, messy, that sort of thing. Topek is the next word. Frank will tell you.
Topek. Oh, come on. Have you wondered ever what an Eskimo lives in summer?
Oh, often.
Well, you see, in winter he lives in a round house made of ice and snow, an igloo, or if it hasn't got an indoor convenience, an ig. Clearly comes the warmth. Clearly comes the warmth, and that melts. So what does he live in? What he lives in, my masters, is a wigwam-shaped arrangement with seal skins flung over it, called a topek.
Right. Patrick Lichfield's turn.
A topek is actually a parrot that comes from Central South America. And why do you say
South
do you like
America.
parrots?
So exotic. So exotic.
It's actually a particularly good... it's actually not really a parrot, it's a cuckoo. I misled you. I suddenly realised it's a cuckoo. And the cuckoo, this is a very different type of cuckoo. You know how awful normal cuckoos are. This is called a non-parasitic cuckoo. And the reason it's non-parasitic is that it's not because it doesn't have any fleas, but it doesn't do the thing that the normal cuckoo that you're used to does, of chucking little birds out of their nests.
Oh, you
It's
used to the
so it's a humane cuckoo. Forget the word parrot. I don't know why. I sort of flew off into it.
Quite so. We'll overlook it.
Just threw it in to make it difficult.
But a non-cuckoo cuckoo is what you're saying it is.
Yes, that's right. It's a sort of odd cuckoo.
A better bred type of cuckoo, I think. Clare.
What a business.
Right, a topek was a Dalmatian variety of 14th century heretic. He or she was a member of a sect which was started by a lapsed Dominican friar. And this sect advocated complete freedom of thought and expression. Well, needless to say, Pope Gregory XI immediately slapped a papal bull against these topeks and banned them.
Right.
They're heretics.
Right. So it's a rather better type of cuckoo. It's a sort of heretic, and it's an Eskimo summer quarters. Arthur must make his choice.
Half a mo.
Certainly, old bean.
Arthur who? Arthur no.
Oh, God.
Didn't he edit the children's encyclopedia?
He'll never say it again.
It's Arthur me.
We are
Arthur
splendidly.
me.
There are three views this side.
Totally split.
This terrible non-cuckoo late parrot.
Expand.
South America.
Expand.
Well, it could well be that. And whenever we get Pope Gregory XI mentioned on this game, my heart sinks.
Oh.
On the other hand,
I'm
it
sorry.
may well be a Dalmatian heretic. Or it may well be Frank's Eskimo summer resident.
Yeah, that's it, Art.
Because it's so ghastly, I rather think it's this Dalmatian heretic.
No spots. Oh, dear, how dreadful. Yeah, that was what you said. Well, you didn't say what I said, but Clare, true or bluff? Here it is.
Oh!
No!
I ought to know Pope Gregory.
No, it isn't a Dalmatian heretic. It's got to be one of the others. Who gave the true definition of topek?
Mush.
Oh, yes. Topek is actually what an Eskimo lives in summer. I thought he just lived in a melting igloo, but there you live and learn. Pokey is the next word, and whose go is it? Oh, yes, Arthur.
During the Depression years in America, Pogie was the in-word for a government-sponsored hostel for where the down-and-outs and tramps could get cheap board and lodging.
Yes, right. Let's hear from Robin Bailey now.
It's an old nursery word for homemade sweets, I mean particularly for homemade toffee, which might be made over a nursery fire on top of a biscuit tin or any old tray.
And Lynsey.
Swift.
Yes. Pogie. It's very soft. It's pogie, and it's an Irish word, and it's the fleece off a lamb. The first time it's sheared, it comes off the lamb. It's very, very soft and lovely, and the Irish are superstitious, and they make it into sort of little blankets, and they put it at the bottom of babies' cradles to bring them luck. So the first fleecing goes with the child, and so pogie is soft wool off a lamb.
Righty-ho. It's a sort of spike, or where vagrants can put up rather cheaply, or could. Homemade sweets, toffee in particular, and this soft fleece. Frank's choice.
No. Down and out. Arthur, of course, is got it all wrong, and I don't think you did it awfully well either, Arthur. But that's another matter.
Pardon me for living.
That's a saucy expression, Arthur, I'd say.
A limited pardon, Arthur. Pogie, you're hokey pokey. You're trying to ruse us into believing it is near, which is ice cream, Victorian Edwardian ice cream. I don't think it's that. It cannot possibly be lamb's wool, and therefore we'll choose it.
Lynsey Paul did say it. True or bluff?
Yes, what
Was she teasing us?